So hello and welcome everyone. I'm Nate Clauser, a member of the steering committee of Our Revolution Somerville and a co-chair of Our Revolution Somerville's electoral working group. I'm pleased to welcome ORS members and members of the public to this mayoral candidate forum. Our Revolution Somerville's mission has been to transform politics in Somerville and advance a broad progressive agenda in the city. We invited candidates running for Somerville mayor, city council, and school committee this year to apply for endorsement by completing our candidate questionnaire. The candidate questionnaire responses can be found on our website at the link that I'm going to drop in the chat now. Our forums are the next step in our endorsement process, where our members and the public have an opportunity to hear more from candidates seeking our endorsement about themselves and their campaigns. In the coming days, ORS members will vote on whether and which candidates they'd like ORS to endorse in this year's municipal elections. 3 of the 4 candidates for mayor applied for ORS endorsement by filling out our candidate questionnaire. 2 of those 3 have since withdrawn. However, we are very pleased to be hosting Will and to learn more about his vision for the city of Somerville. This forum, like all of our municipal candidate forums this year, is being held on Zoom and is also being live streamed to the ORS YouTube channel, where it will remain available for after the fact viewing. So without further ado, I'll turn things over to this evening's moderator, Melinda Green, to explain the rules and to kick things off. Melinda?
I'm Melinda Green and I'm muted. Thanks, Nate. Hi, I'm Melinda Green and I'm a member of ORS's electoral working group. I'm also a renter in Ward 2, where I live with an awesome cat named Hans, and I'll be your moderator for tonight's forum. So we'll begin in a moment with the candidate's opening statement, which along with all the question responses this evening will be limited to 2 minutes in length. To let you know when we're running out of time, our timekeeper, Sergi, will hold up a yellow sheet of paper when you have 30 seconds left, Will, example there, and a red sheet of paper when you have 5 seconds left. Then when your time expires, if you haven't completed your question, your audio will be muted, got the buzzer, and I will move on to the next question. All of the questions that will be asked tonight were prepared in advance by Our Revolution Somerville's electoral working group with input from ORS members and coalition partner organizations and have been approved by the ORS steering committee. The candidate was given the question topics in advance, but he has not seen the questions themselves prior to tonight's event. Willem Ba, ORS thanks you for joining us this evening, and we look forward to hearing more about your vision for Somerville. Let's begin with your 2-minute opening statement.
Thank you for the opportunity, Melinda, to speak with you tonight and your group. My name is Will Mba, City Councilor at Large and candidate for mayor. I'm sure everyone watching has heard me state why I'm running for mayor. If you haven't, I encourage you to go to my website and read why. But tonight, I would like to use my opening statement to talk about the events of the past month, what I believe led to them, and what I believe needs to be done going forward to ensure it does not happen again. As a candidate of color, I know firsthand how difficult it is running for office, especially for the first time you're running for office. People approach your candidacy differently, and candidates of color often do not have the same resources that other candidates have. The goal of any political advocacy group should be to expand the arena of ideas and voices. So this is why I was disappointed when a person of color was excluded from ORS endorsement process. I'm pleased to see that your organization has developed a robust plan to address this incident. But I truly believe the best way to prevent it from happening again is by recruiting, listening, and engaging with a diverse group of voices. I'll be happy to help with this, and we can work on it together. I know this because your organization took the lead on fighting for racial equity in 2017, when it supported my candidacy when few others would. Had it not been for ORS, there will not be a person of color on the city council, full stop. I look forward to engaging with ORS as it recommits to and strengthen the values it showed in 2017. Thank you again for the opportunity, and I look forward to speaking with you tonight.
Thank you, Will. For our first question, it's about the pandemic response in Somerville. Throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, the city has stepped up to provide food to residents and to implement a citywide eviction moratorium. Food and housing insecurities were already problems prior to COVID and have just been exacerbated by the pandemic. The mayor is uniquely positioned to authorize the provision of supports to authorize the provision of supports to the community in this area. What will you do to ensure that the city provides help to the residents facing these issues?
Thank you for that question, Melinda. Since you asked about food and housing, I would tackle the food part first, and then I'm sure, like from the topic of the question that you provided, I'm sure we'll talk more about housing later. But let's be very clear. Food insecurity wasn't anything just around for the pandemic. These are issues that happen to families year round. And so the pandemic has just further exacerbated what this issue means to our community. So for one, I will increase the funding for Somerville Cares Fund and expand its program work. Also even make this funding permanent, because this is how we can show our community that we are there to help. I'm also committed to expand the lunch and breakfast option, because right now there are students that I have seen or heard from other families that have been provided. Let's say if you're like a Muslim, sometimes like you don't eat pork, but sometimes they are subject to eating that just because they don't even have any option. We need to expand those options. And also partnering with mutual organizations like Mamas. This is something that we should be doing, because these are grassroots groups that provide community services and food to families who are facing food insecurity. And I would like to say another key component of things we should be doing is to improve and expand our education and outreach, because it's really sad that we can be producing all these resources, have all these tools, but people don't know about. So a lot of people that are victims of food insecurity are unaware of the resources that we have. So it would be good that we use all the tools possible to let people know that there are resources available to help them.
Thank you, Will. So continuing on about the pandemic response, Just Us Somerville has noted that Somerville's COVID data clearly shows Latino and Black residents are disproportionately affected by COVID-19, which leads to poorer health, increased risk of death, and economic losses. We also see that Latino, Asian, and Black residents' vaccination rates have lagged behind white residents. As mayor, how would you address racial disparities in the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic and in vaccination rates? And how would you ensure an equitable recovery for all?
Thank you again for that question. I think this pandemic has really highlighted the racial disparity in our community. This is something that was already there. It's all embedded, but the pandemic really, even the health impact, the people hit the hardest are all people of color. And so we need to, these are people that have been marginalized for decades, and the inequalities have also been there for decades, but this pandemic has just taken to a whole new level. For example, it has shown the need of how much high-speed internet is a necessity and not a luxury. That is something that we need to do to expand it throughout our community, because I've seen firsthand just how reliable everybody was relying on this. So we need to actually come together as a community to create a just and equitable community for all.
Thank you, Will. So next question is about housing justice. What municipal tools would you use to address the housing crisis, especially for low-income residents, families, and those with accessibility needs? In particular, would you support, number one, increasing the percentage of family units and 30 to 50% AMI affordable units in inclusionary zoning requirements? Two, a requirement for developers to create workforce housing. And three, increasing linkage fees on developers.
Well, thank you, Melinda, for that question. First, I will say yes to all of those. First, and then also, just so you know, I've been a renter. These are issues that are personal to me. I've experienced the housing crisis personally. So this is not something that is new. And with this current state of mind, we need to actually, like as mayor, I want to work with the Somerville Community Land Trust to address this, develop vacant properties and make them into affordable housing. How can we even, like the most formidable thing we did on the city council was to create the Office of Housing Stability. How can we fully fund and expand that? That is something that I'm committed to. Also, like increasing the affordable housing requirement for larger developers. Somerville is a hotspot for development. We need to ask, developers to do more. And lastly, I would say that I will also take care of tenants with Tenants' Bill of Rights. We talk about rent control. It has to be on the table. Right to counsel, it has to be on the table. Right to purchase, it has to be on the table. Those are different tools in the toolbox that we need to approach it aggressively.
Well, Somerville, this is probably a good segue to this question. Somerville has valuable commercial and residential space, yet we often hear the talking point that if we ask too much of developers, they will decide to leave Somerville and develop elsewhere. What are some of the demands you would make of developers who want to profit off our city?
Thank you, Melinda. I think 2017, when I ran for office, development was, like a key issue. And that's why I made a commitment during that time that I will not be accepting any money from any for-profit developer, no exception. And right now, I have also stated that. So I've not done that ever since I started my campaign. It's pretty simple. Once you do that, people, residents know where your values are, that you have to put the needs of the resident first before profit. So one, as mayor, there are two things that I'm looking forward to do. Institute a community benefit agreement and a community impact report. Those are things that, I want that to be the law of the land. Because once you have a community benefit agreement, you have people, community group, like imagine, look like the Union Square Neighborhood Council. That's a clear example of what a community group can do, can be a force of good in the community, because you need to take care of people that are already here, the job losses, the displacement that are happening, the local businesses that you've mentioned. We need all that, and that will happen through community benefit agreement. That will include affordable housing, family housing, construct with fair labor agreement. Those are things that a community group can be equipped to handle, and show that you show that community that you are putting their interests first before profit. And as far as community impact report is concerned, is another tool or law that will hold these developers accountable to ensure that they are living up to those agreements. So those are the things I look forward to instituting, and I'm committed to doing that. This is something that I value. This is something that I've lived through it, and we need to ensure that in our we are all about people first before profit.
Thank you. Now on to covenants. The outgoing mayor, Joe Curtatone, has negotiated covenants, which are contracts between the city and private developers for monetary contributions allocated to different city budget items based on unilateral decisions by the executive branch of the city. Exciting stuff. Would you negotiate any covenants in a transparent manner that includes the community and the city council in decision-making on where monetary contributions and other benefits from developers would be directed?
Thank you, Melinda. I think for this, I just want something, that, especially for covenants, it must be negotiated in a transparent and open process. One thing that we've noticed in our municipal government is just there's not a lot of transparency and accountability. So these are tools that we need to implement and use it throughout the city, because it will help pay for infrastructures, pay for linkage fee, contribute to community benefits fund. So we need to leverage that and use that everywhere else in the city. A covenant must be included in any community benefit agreement. This is something that, I would love, and be committed to having it negotiated between community neighborhood councils with developers, because that is the way, and of course, in a transparent manner, to make sure that everybody has input and it's done in an open, fair, and transparent manner. And as mayor, I would love to facilitate that.
Thank you, Will. So Pilot stands for payments in lieu of taxes that large nonprofits pay to municipalities. In your written questionnaire, you committed to support the creation of a resident pilot negotiating committee with the ability to make binding recommendations about pilots. What does it mean to you, and what other changes would you make to pilot negotiations in Somerville?
Thank you, Melinda, for that question as well. I think we all agree that even though we can agree that our nonprofits are not doing enough, but they think that they are doing enough, which is okay too. It is their job to defend what they are doing, you know. But for me, I feel like TUFs and other nonprofits are not paying their fair share. We've understood that. And one, especially for the pilot agreement, we've been pushing TUFs to build more housing on their campuses so that they don't continue to drive our cost of housing in Somerville. They've been resisting for so long, but right now they've started doing it, which is great. I'm excited that at least something is happening on that front. Also, I support Erica Uteheaven's bill that would require nonprofits like TUF to pay their fair share, which means that if they have property values of over $15 million, they are required to pay 25% of their property taxes. I don't think that's enough we are asking for them. And so I would also love to see community groups like the neighborhood council, you know, work to also like be part of that negotiation process with the pilot agreement so that they can demand more of accountability. How do we empower community groups to negotiate on behalf of the city? So I'll be committed to doing that as mayor, because you want to, you know, like make sure that everybody feel involved in this process. Everybody feel like they're part of the process, is open, is transparent, is inclusive.
Thank you, Will. We're doing really well on time.
Hey, you know, it's like I have not been so good at timing, but I'm always a little bit nervous when I'm just by myself. I just think that I like to talk a lot. These are issues that I'm passionate about, but now that I've been given a time constraint, I have to try to condense it. So, yeah.
Next question is about safe consumption sites. Drug use and addiction is a public health issue and shouldn't be treated as a criminal one. In your questionnaire response, you stated that you are in support of an opening of a safe consumption site in Somerville. By when will you commit to doing so? What challenges or roadblocks do you foresee, and how will you overcome them? Will you commit to ensuring no passive police presence at the site?
Yes, to all, Melinda. These are all things that, you know, I support, you know, because one, we are a compassionate city, and the approach we have taken for the past 50 years to address addiction, we've seen that those approaches have failed. Science and research has shown that safe consumption sites actually save lives. You know, we know people, these are our neighbors, these are our friends. And so we need to create a pathway to rehabilitation. This is not rocket science. And that is what I'm committed to doing as far as that is concerned. We will need community input. It's going to be a community process. It's going to be open and transparent, making sure that everybody, you know, like has a way to provide input, because we are one community. How can we come together and define a new future that we want? Thank you.
Thank you. So expanding upon that, about the last part of the question, about policing and public safety. The police have become increasingly so responsible for a variety of issues, many of which do not require armed response or powers of arrest. There's interest in reducing the scope of the police to reduce cost and improve public safety. The mayor is uniquely positioned to create alternatives that are independent from the police department. Popular ideas include unarmed traffic enforcement or a cahoots-like style crisis response team. What responsibilities would you move out of the Somerville Police Department, and what alternatives would you create to do so, and by when?
Wow. Thank you, Melinda, for that question. The last part about by when, I don't know. I don't have a timeline, but what I can tell you is that as a Black person, these are issues that are deeply personal to me. As somebody, who has been racially profiled because of the color of my skin, as a father with 2 young children that are all Black, every time they are out of the house, I feel worried about their safety. And I have shown that I'm not scared to take tough votes to propose cuts to the mayor's budget as far as police is concerned. That is why I even proposed a $500 cut to the salary line item of policing, realizing that I first proposed cutting to the overtime budget, but I realized it wasn't enough. So it wasn't going to do much. So I then decided to, take another pivot to cut it from the salary line item. But as mayor, I would take savings from the police budget to invest in our schools. Because I have said it again, 100 times, we need to dismantle the school to prison pipeline. And what does that mean? Spending more money in hiring guidance counselors and teachers. I'm committed to doing that, as the next mayor of this great city of Somerville. So there's a lot, that we can do, especially invest in alternative responses. We know that police have been asked to address many societal problems that they are not prepared to handle. So we need to reimagine, like how the future that we want and with which tools that we need to use to be able to handle those. So we need more social workers. We need more mental health specialists, more professionals who are best suited to handle those issues. And I would tell you, there are police that have told me they are not best suited to handle these issues. So how do we reinvest money from law enforcement into these other alternatives, on-site interventionists?
Thank you, Will. Moving on from public safety and into infrastructure and funding for maintenance and repairs. Somerville's municipal buildings, roads, sidewalks, water distribution, sewer collection, and stormwater management systems are all approaching the end of their intended lifespans. Many of their systems also fail to meet current code, regulatory, environmental, and just the general level of service requirements for a modern city. The cost to just keep these systems from approaching catastrophic failure could be in excess of $1 billion over the next couple of decades. Residents are already starting to feel the financial burden with significant increases in water and sewer rates over the past few years. Do you have a financial roadmap for handling these repairs?
Wow. Thank you, Melinda. That's a great question. I think one of the first things that I'm sure you already know this, and most of the people that live in this city has seen that there's a lot of construction, of our infrastructure now, upgrade to our sewer system, our schools and stuff. So as mayor, I want to first of all take, first action is to take an audit, of our buildings, everything to look at the structural integrity of all our buildings, just to see that's where we start, because we should not be doing this now at the last minute. It's almost like now that is where we want to the city is almost plunging off a cliff. Once we have that assessment, we determine which buildings, we need to retrofit, which ones are suitable to be converted to zero emission buildings, which ones need to be torn down, like that, because we need to prepare Somerville for the impacts of climate change. So that is the first step. That is how we do it, And I have an expert in that. That's why I was endorsed by 314 Action Fund, a national organization that endorses, candidates with a background in STEM. So we have to look at our infrastructure project, look at how we want to take this community to carbon neutrality. How can we make our city a model of sustainability and prepare for the impact of climate change? And that actually means that when you talk about infrastructure, we need to build, the profile of the city is changed. So how do we build more protected bike lanes, bus lanes, things that additional green spaces, think about our seniors, all these different people that are not often missing in our conversation, our neighbors with disabilities. How do we build infrastructure and redesign our street that put them at front and center of those conversations?
It's good that you brought that up, because the next question is about the vision for the future in terms of infrastructure. The following statement was made in a call to action from the Somerville Alliance for Safe Streets, SAS. Somerville residents have volunteered thousands of hours to help develop a Vision Zero action plan Summer Vision, the Climate Forward Plan, the Open Space Task Force Strategy, and the Parking Task Force recommendations. The community continues to express our priorities, yet progress is too slow. What is your vision for the future of infrastructure in Somerville, and how will you accelerate building a safe and accessible Somerville?
Thank you, Melinda. I'm glad that you're asking that question. This is also, and I'm glad that you also mentioned SAS, because this is like a group that I helped to create. It's like they've been doing like an amazing work, and we've been able to like sit together and really thought about like all the things that we can do as a community. We've created like a lot of time, they've kept people out of the people that they've left out of the picture, like our neighbors with disabilities. They haven't been, been part of the picture as far as, like that is concerned. How do we look at like McDrive, like street safety? How do we build, like I've said that if you build our roads for cars, cars will come. If you build our roads for bikes, bikes will come. Like, how do we create more traffic calming measures? We were talking about like really zero emission in terms of like how we want to like look at our city, but we don't even have the capacity to create a system that works for everybody. So we've been like creating, we've talked about traffic calming measure, curb cuts, to make sure that, and then ADA accessibility, like this, we've done like enormous work in this group that I can go on like for the entire day. But I think, we need to, I will continue to build on the work that we've done, with SARS. Because imagine, look, for example, like even people in East Somerville nobody should be like struggling to go do grocery and be scared of road safety. Because, and I have to also say, this also will have to come at a cost. I have to be honest, we might have to deal away with some parking to create a city that we want.
Thank you, Will. So you're right, obviously speaking of McGrath, the corridor of death, residents navigating Somerville face a variety of challenges, including streets in disrepair, broken pedestrian ways, and insufficient ADA compliance and enforcement. The Department of Public Works is responsible for maintaining our existing infrastructure. The Inspectional Services Department is responsible for ensuring ADA compliance and accessibility throughout the city. What will you do to make these departments more responsive to these safety and accessibility needs?
Thank you for that question, Melinda. I think one of the first things we need to like do is really fully expand, this department, and also make sure that they actually collaborate. Because a lot of times when you ask questions, you're in a committee meeting, you're asking ISD something, they're telling you, oh, it's, under the purview of DPW and stuff like that. So we need to like have them come together and empower them also to be able to investigate the building. Look at even the Brown School, like, oh, the schools are unhealthy, this and that. So we need to empower like DPW and also like empower ISD and give them the tools that they need to be able to do their job. And they need to be able to work together. As mayor, I will facilitate that. This is like, they have to do their job. We give them the tools they need, but we also need to make sure that everybody has everything that they need to be able to like create a system that works for everyone.
Thank you, Will. For our final question of the evening on charter reform. Do you agree that the status quo structure of the city's charter concentrates too much power in the hands of the mayor? Will you commit to passing charter reform that significantly shifts power to city council during your first term? And what specific charter reforms do you consider to be the most important?
Thank you, Melinda, for that question. I think for charter reforms, it's been long overdue. The city is changing, we are all changing, our government is changing, but we are still operating back in the 50th or a century charter reform. So yes, I support a lot of changes. One, the mayor has too much power. As you probably already know, we only have the ability to cut the budget. We cannot add anything to the budget. We don't even if we cut it, we cannot say where the budget goes. So I support, like equal, we need to operate as equal branches of government. When we cut the budget, we need to be able to allocate where the funds go. Like, for example, when I mentioned that I want to cut the police budget, to hire more interventionists, more school teachers, the mayor can choose not to do that. So I think that is something that we should, we should address through a charter reform. I also think that we should even move towards a ranked choice voting. That's an option on the table. I also think that even the city councilor's job, they should be able to have their own staff, have their own aides. It should be a full-time job. It's a lot juggling with so many different things. And so we need our own council. Like we've been asking, begging for that, so it is not something that we should be struggling to do. Like there's a lot that we can do through charter reform. And I'm really committed to empowering the city council, so that they can do their job, because they are elected by their constituent to go there and deliver. But sometimes they get hamstringed. They are almost like more of an activist than legislator. So we need to be able to create a space where they can have their own staff, have their own legislative aides, and to enable them to do the job that they've been elected to do.
Thank you for that. So that's our final question, but we do have, would you like to say anything else? Maybe a closing statement of sorts, if you have one. It's entirely optional.
Thank you, Melinda. I just want to say, I'm really blessed to be part of, this community, to be part of your organization. You're part of my story. This community is part of my story. For somebody like me from Cameroon, who's been here for just a decade, having been elected twice now, running for mayor, it's very humbling. And having, just so much enormous support from this community, I'm truly humbled, because I've never seen anything like this. It's just about giving back. I'm not running, for prestige or power. I've always been about the people. And so I will be honored, to be able to, have your endorsement, have your support, and also have the viewers, reach out to me, call me with any issues or thought and concern, and remember to go out to vote on September 14th. I hope to count on your vote. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you tonight.
Thank you, Will. Thank you to everyone watching for your engagement. I know it's, early on a Friday, summer evening, so I'm glad that everyone showed up to watch this forum. As a reminder, folks can find Will's candidate questionnaire responses along with those of the other candidates for mayor, city council, and school committee, and the endorsements and elections section of our website, ourrevolutionsomerville.org. And good night.